Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video. This is where I talk about the last 10 new to me board games that I've played, and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. Now, most of the games this episode are from last year, as I'm trying to catch up on all of those, but we do have some older games too, and some hidden gems as well. But before I get started on these 10 games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. At number 10, I have Sky of Fire. Now, this is a board game from the House of the Dragon universe. It's an area control game, and to be honest, it's pretty bad. It's a mass market style game where clearly little effort has gone into the design of this one. It's pretty much risk adjacent as you're moving your troops around, fighting other people through dice rolls. I did like a couple of the touches where a lot of the actions you're taking are card driven, so you can combine these cards together to get bigger turns by moving faster or sailing around the map or deploying more troops onto the map. But all in all, it just comes down to dice rolling, and it becomes a bit of a chore and a bit of a grind because people can just keep on taking action until they run out of things to do. So again, very much like Risk. So I wanted to like this one because I like the IP so much, but unfortunately it would need reworking from the ground up in order to be any good. At number 9, I have Distilled. Now, this is a pretty grandiose Euro-style game, a resource management game as you are trying to kind of brew these different alcoholic beverages. You're doing that by collecting cards and different bottles and things, and then I suppose the unique thing about this is that once you've committed to the different ingredients in your drink, you are going to skim off the top card from your deck and also, or from that particular hand of cards, and the bottom one at random. And then depending on what you have left is what you're going to brew. So you can go in with the intention of making something, but that card could be the one that you take out, meaning that you might want to chuck in more of the same ingredients to make sure that you have a stronger guarantee of getting that particular drink made. Other than that, it's pretty standard stuff, just collecting things, cashing those things in for points, and stuff like that really. Some public objectives and some little bit of engine building as well. Now, generally speaking, these collect, cash-in games are a bit mundane for me. They're not kind of my jam, I suppose, and this was another example of that. I kind of find those games a little bit boring, and I think this one was just that. So I can't really recommend this one. It looks lovely, lovely production, but again, that style of game just doesn't quite work for me. At number 8, I have Kilt. Now, this is a small box card game with quite a cool mechanism as you are trying to manipulate these different Scots clans up this pyramid, up this hierarchy, to get your different clans in the most prevalent seats, as in right at the top of the pyramid. You can kind of shift things up, you can kill these different cards as you go, and everybody's got their kind of secret clans that they're trying to work towards, but there can be some crossover between you and the other players. Now, I thought the game was fine, but it does become pretty predictable about what people are going to go for, and you just want to hope that it works out in your favour and that maybe you're collaborating with somebody who wants the same thing as you. Otherwise, you're probably going to be out of luck. So I thought the game has some promise. I think with a few tweaks, maybe a bit more of an interesting theme or an interesting IP attached to it, it could be there. But as it stands, it's pretty standard stuff. It's nothing special. And, I suppose if anything, it's pretty quick and it doesn't outstay its welcome. But I do feel like it's missing a magical ingredient or two to make it that much, to make it actually enjoyable. So that is Kilt at number 8. At number 7, I have Palter. Now, this is a small box oink game, so it comes in those tiny little square boxes. And it's a dexterity game that's, if I read this one from the rules alone, or if I rated this one from the rules alone, I was expecting to maybe rate it a 1 or a 2 out of 10. But in practice, it's actually quite fun, as you have these kind of random little components, such as like rings and these little shells, these cubes and things. You're going to put them into the palm of your hand. You're going to reveal a card, and you're trying to drop a certain amount of these components without dropping other ones. Because if you do, you're not going to win the round, essentially. If you're the first person to do that and grab this ghost figure, then you are going to get a bell, and the bell is going to be points. But from then on, you are going to have these bells in your palm as well, so you're essentially having your points in the palm of your hand, and if you drop those, you're going to be losing points. So this actually has a very clever catch-up mechanism that I thought was great, because if you have 4 bells and you're very close to winning, that's a lot more you're going to have in the palm of your hand that you're potentially going to drop. So in fun factor alone, this one could have actually rated higher, but I suppose I have to be a little bit more objective about things. This is essentially having some plastic in your hand and trying to drop certain bits of plastic and not the other bits of plastic. So I suppose I have to rein my excitement in a little bit, but it was way better than it had any right to be, and it was pure fun, to be honest. So that is Drew Palter at number 7. At number 6, I have Leaf. So this is a game I've already reviewed on the channel. This is a family weight, gateway level tile placement game, but the tiles you're placing are in the shapes of different leaves. And I love this idea that when you place these leaves, all the different kind of tips of these leaves can connect to other leaves and give you actions. It's all about trying to place these leaves as optimally as possible and not to leave opportunities to the next player. And these different actions are pretty basic in their own right, things such as climbing a track, collecting more cards, getting a bit of area control in terms of these mushrooms. It's very basic stuff, and to be honest, I was a little disappointed or underwhelmed with all those mini games, but the main tile placement action with those leaves I think is fantastic and would lend itself perfectly to a more involved game. So maybe an example of a game being good, but one that's not quite right for me at this stage in my my gaming life. I want more involved games. Don't get me wrong, I like simple games, but they need to have some meat on the bones. This one, I think it might be a little bit lackluster in terms of those meaningful decisions. But a lovely production. I'm certain a lot of people are going to like this one because it does have that fun factor and that tangible thing to hook onto, and a great table presence through that leaf placement mechanism. So that is Leaf at number 6. At number 5, I have Kirie. Now this is a 2-player only simultaneous selection card game where you and your opponent are going to be dueling samurais, and you are going to be playing these cards in order to kind of move backwards or forwards on this track. You are going to be kind of striking your opponent or changing your stance, and depending on which stance you're in is going to limit the attacks that you can make. So for example, if you're in that lower stance, you want to be attacking at close range, where in the higher stance you can have a bit more range. And it's all about trying to not only hit your opponent, because if you hit your opponent twice you're going to win, but also get into the head of your opponent and block their attacks. And I like this little twist where when you use a card, basically you're playing 2 cards per round, but one of those cards is locked out of being an option for the next round. So you need to use that quite carefully and again deduce what your opponent can do in the following round. It can be a frustrating game because a lot of the time you are swinging and missing, or when you actually do swing, you're going to get blocked. But when you hit that landing blow or that killing blow, it is quite satisfying. And I think the theme actually comes through quite well, because it does have that kind of mental chess thing going on where the smallest mistake is going to be deadly. So yeah, this one I've only played it once so far, so I do need to play it some more. But it does have some promise. I'm not quite sure if maybe it is a bit too rigid or a bit too luck dependent on just taking a wild shot, or is there actually that kind of mental gymnastics that I'm hoping is in this game. So again, I think the jury is still out on a final verdict, but right now it does have some promise and it could go either way. At number 4, I have Rafter 5. Now this is another dexterity game by Oink, and to be honest, on fun factor alone, this one could have been at number 1. I think this is a brilliant dexterity game, and that is quite a weird thing for me to say because I generally don't like dexterity games. But this one is just an absolute blast, as you are basically building this raft on top of the game box by placing these kind of strips of card. And every time you're going to lift up one of these people on the raft and put a new strip of card down there, and also a piece of treasure. And all these different meeples come in different sizes. So you have these huge meeples, you have the little tiny ones, and it's all about trying to use the kind of weight distribution to keep on placing things down and not to drop or not to make the raft collapse. and drop your opponent's treasure chests, because if you drop 5 opponent's treasure chests, then you're going to lose the game and everybody else is going to win, essentially. I played this back to back to back to back. I think it is really addictive. It's so much fun to teach, and it's just a joy to play. So this one I think is going to be a forever keeper in my collection, because whoever I teach this to is going to enjoy it, and I can pretty much bank on that. It's just that much fun. So that is Rafter 5. A massive surprise for me to enjoy this one as much as I did. It's just a brilliant game. So that is Rafter 5 at number 4. At number 3, I have Footprints. So back to a traditional chairman of the board style Euro. This one is a kind of a hybrid engine builder with a bit of racing, a bit of resource management, some kind of contract fulfillment things going on at the same time, as you're managing this hand of cards, quite a small hand of cards, to traverse this map, reach different checkpoints, kind of pick up resources, cash them in, get endgame objectives, and of course race to the end of the board to get some bonus points as well. I love this multi-use card system, and each card can be either used to move on the map, or it can be used to boost your stats on your player board to make you move faster in the future. Kind of a lot to do in a small amount of time, because you can't get everything done in this game, and I kind of like games like that because they make me want to come back and better myself. So I played this a few times now, and I think the learning curve does come through, because I think the first game I did terribly, the second game I did much better. So this one, I'm not entirely sold it's going to be a forever keeper. I'm not quite sure it's going to have the legs to really hold up, but I could be wrong on that, because I think it's got that great kind of weights to complexity to strategy to tactics ratio going on that's really favourable. So yeah, this one I like it. I'm not sure if I love it yet, and I even think because each player in this game has a different unique power that they can use each round. All of those are very interesting as well, so I do like that as an added touch. So I think I'll play this a few times more before I make up my mind if it's going to be a forever keeper. But right now, I think I'm going to give it a very soft recommendation, or even give it a commendation. But it could just fall on the wrong side of that with repeated plays if it doesn't quite hold up. But right now, I'm enjoying it a lot. And yeah, I think it's a nice, clean design that feels, it feels smooth, but it still feels engaging, and it doesn't have too much bloat going on at the same time. So that is Footprints at number 3. At number 2, I have Marabuun, which is the latest small box card game by Dr. Rainer Knizia. Now, this is a 2-player only area control game that has the I split you choose mechanism. But I love the way that in this game you are splitting these dice that are rolled each round, and the dice are all going to relate to the different regions on the map are going to have numbers in them. And those numbers are going to contribute towards your control in those regions. So if you have the highest total value, you'll get X amount of points. But as the game progresses, you as the players have some autonomy as to what, or the points each region is going to be worth. There's also some additional little engine building you can do, or some powers you can unlock on your player board. And yeah, it's some really cool little tactical decisions here as you block people off, you invest in certain regions, know when to give up on regions. And again, I always love it when those I split you choose games put a lot of pressure on you to make those tough decisions, because of course you're dividing up those dice, but your opponent picks before you do. So you don't want to give them too good of an option, because they'll just grab it. But at the same time, you don't want to give them a bad option, because they're going to leave you with what you don't want. So I love the way that that works. It's a great kind of visceral decision to be made there. And the fact this offers a lot of game in a small box in a small amount of time, and I was very impressed with this one. So, I generally love Rainer Knizia games. This one is one of the best ones I've played in quite some time. It's fantastic. And for a new design, full props to the Doctor for that. So, wonderful 2-player game, definitely going to be a candidate for at least top 3 2-player only game of this year, or of last year. But yeah, a wonderful design. So that is Marabuun at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Cursed Court. Now, this is a bluffing game with a little bit of deduction, kind of a bit of betting as well. as you are trying to work out which of these characters is active in the current round. And you're going to have limited information in this game where you have knowledge of a character between you and your neighbour where nobody else can see, but also some public information as well. And you are going to be placing these chips, these tokens, on certain characters to say that, you know, I think this arrangement of characters or this particular character is in the mix this round. But the cool thing about this game is that you can kick people off those spots by betting double the amount. And as you can imagine, because the information is so limited, you can actually throw in some kind of misleading information and force people to, you know, outbid you when you know that character was never there in the first place, and force them to waste all of their betting chips. Very clean design, and this is one of those games that is truly a hidden gem, because I think the fun factor is high. It scales, you know, to these higher player counts, and this is one of those games that could easily be rebranded into kind of any IP under the sun. You know, you could do like a Pokemon version, Harry Potter, you know, Lord of the Rings, Marvel, because, you know, there's no theme in this game whatsoever, but it does require a fixed amount of artwork in order to differentiate all the different spots you're betting on. So I think there is really money left on the table with this design because it's accessible, the production quality is great. All they need to do is just change the artwork depending on the market they're going for, and again, could make an absolute killing. So I'm surprised this one isn't a colossal hit. It ticks so many boxes, as in the kind of games that tend to blow up and be popular, but for some reason this one has not done that, and I'm not quite sure why. Maybe the artwork is a little bit too niche. It has that kind of weird fantasy look to it that looks generic, but as I said, if you rebrand this, it would be huge in my opinion, because again, it's so easy to play, it's accessible, but the choices are there and the fun factor is high. So that is Cursed Court at number 1. So there we have it, that's another 10 games. Hopefully something on here has caught your eye. I understand that a lot of these games this time were from 2023, but again, it takes a little bit longer for those games to get over here to the UK, and of course for me as a one-man entity to get all these games played. But hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.